I need you to hear something that nobody in the financial space is going to say to you, but I'm going to say it. Your budget's not the problem. Your tracking app is not the problem. Your spreadsheet's not the problem. The fact that you know exactly where your money's going and it still keeps going there anyway is not a discipline problem. It's actually a nervous system problem. And the financial industry has no idea what to do with that. Here's what I know after 16 years of sitting inside people's financial lives as a licensed financial advisor. When somebody can't stop a spending pattern that they genuinely and truly want to stop, when the money keeps disappearing in ways they can't explain but can't seem to change, they are almost never being reckless or irresponsible. They're medicating. I'm Jamila McClooney, a licensed fiduciary financial advisor and the founder of Black Wealth Financial. I'm certified in the trauma of money, and today we're going to talk about spending as a survival strategy, what it looks like, where it comes from, what it's actually costing you, and what you can do about it that actually works. Let's work. So let me paint a picture for you. It's a Tuesday, nothing dramatic or too serious has happened. Work's fine, the day's fine. But somewhere around like 7 p.m., there's like this low tension in your chest that you couldn't name if someone asked you to or paid you to. It's vague. It's like a restless discomfort. Not quiet anxiety, not quite sadness, just a feeling that something's slightly off and you want it to stop. So you open the app or you get in the car or you order the thing you've been looking at for 3 weeks. And for a moment, something just makes sense. Like the feeling lifts. It's a brief, clean hit of relief, of pleasure, of control, of something. And then it's gone. And you're looking at a confirmation email for something you didn't need and might not have even wanted, and the feeling's back. And now there's a layer on top of it called guilt. That cycle's not a spending problem. It's self-medication, and it works. It works temporarily, though, and that's exactly why it's hard to stop it. Medication works. If you think about it, if something's wrong or you're sick, you go to the doctor. Even placebos work. That's the whole point of it. It changes how you feel in the moment, right? It interrupts something uncomfortable. It gives your nervous system a brief window of relief from whatever it's been carrying. The problem is not that it doesn't work. The problem is what it actually costs you financially. And when we think about it, here's what's actually happening inside your brain when you make a purchase to change how you feel. So your brain has a reward system, right? It's like a primary currency, a neurotransmitter called dopamine. And you may have heard of dopamine. There's a lot of ways that we get dopamine. You might have heard it as dopamine hits. So dopamine is released in anticipation of a reward. So that's why the browsing often feels better than the buying. You're just scrolling, you're searching, adding to the cart. All of that's a dopamine firing in anticipation of relief. So when the purchase happens, there's a brief dopamine spike. It goes up. The discomfort quiets, whatever's going on in your nervous system. It gets the signal that the threat has been handled and you feel momentarily okay, or you might feel good. But dopamine spikes, they're followed by dopamine drops. Or sometimes that fades once it starts to drop, that feeling of relief or fulfillment, it starts to fade. And that original discomfort, whatever you were feeling before the dopamine came in, it returns and it often gets amplified. And now, not only are you having that dopamine drop, but you're now on top of it dealing with guilt or regret or shame, any of those emotions. And now your brain has a new data point or something to process. So spending made you feel better. But the next time that discomfort comes, which it will, it's going to come back if we don't get to the root of it, your brain already knows the fastest route to that relief because it's done it before. Want you to know something. I'm going to say this over and over and over till you get it. You're not weak. This is not a matter of weakness. You're actually wired. This is what's happening in your body. So, the same neurological loop that underlies every compulsive behavior, whether it's alcohol, food, gambling, sex, scrolling, the substance or behavior changes, but the loop is identical, right? Like it can be any one of those things, but the loop is identical. And you can't budget your way out of a neurological loop. You can't discipline your way out of it. You can't punish your way out of it. You can only understand it, name it, and interrupt it when something that addresses the actual need underneath it. That's the only way you can fix it, with something underneath it that addresses that actual need, not covers it up or puts a band-aid, temporary band-aid on it to make you feel better. So here's what emotional spending actually looks like. And you may not have even considered this before or even thought of it, but emotional spending doesn't look the same for everybody. That may be why it's hard to identify. And so here's the profiles that I see most often that comes up a lot. You have, and see where you fall into any one of these. You have the stress spender. Now, the stress spender, they may have a high pressure environment, a demanding job, demanding relationships, or just an overall demanding life. The spending happens as kind of like a decompression from those things. So after a brutal week, after a hard conversation, after a period of just prolonged or chronic stress, it feels earned with the stuff that you buy. It feels like the one thing that belongs entirely to you in a life full of obligations. So the purchases are often justified as self-care. I often hear clients say that, like, well, I needed that. Like, I needed to take care of myself. I needed to feel better. And so you justify it by, self-care is important, obviously, but the stress spender kind of justifies this overspending and spending that's not budgeted as self-care. And sometimes it is self-care. But when self-care is the only emotional regulation tool that you have, and it requires a credit card to access it, then it becomes a liability. So next we have the boredom spender. And this is more common than people want to admit or even may know. Not every spending episode is attached to pain or stress, right? Some are just attached to emptiness. So that low grade kind of restlessness of a life that feels like it's missing something. Shopping fills that time and fills that space. And it provides a stimulation. It creates a sensation of like newness or motion, of possibility, without requiring any of the vulnerability that actually addresses that emptiness and what that would cause you to kind of pull from you or explore to be able to fulfill that emptiness. So you just fill that empty space with spending. Next, we have the avoidance spender. Now, the avoidance spender, this person, they spend when they should be dealing with something else entirely, something completely different. When their relationship is struggling, or when the work situation is deteriorating, or when it's time to fold those clothes, or actually do the laundry, clean, some task that you've just been putting off, when there's a conversation that they've been avoiding for 3 months. Spending is like that redirect. It gives the brain something concrete and controllable that you can focus on while the actual problem waits in the background. But the problem with that is the problem's not going anywhere. It's probably growing while you're avoiding it. We also have the comfort spender. Now, the comfort spender, this is oftentimes rooted in childhood scarcity. So if you grew up without, you had to go without, if there were things that you wanted and couldn't have, if money in your household was like a source of stress or deprivation, spending as an adult can feel like proof that things are different now, that you made it, that you're safe. Every purchase is a small act of defiance against the scarcity that you grew up in. The problem is that the spending designed to escape scarcity can actually recreate it. I see this a lot with people who buy J's. As a kid, your parents may not have been able to afford it or get it for you. So as an adult, you got J money and you buy every pair that comes out, whether you wear them or not. But just that ability to be able to buy something that you were denied as a child that you really wanted, maybe that everybody else had or the cool kids had. That can be an example of a comfort spender. You also have the social spender. Now, the social spender, they spend to belong, to keep up. You heard the phrase, keeping up with the Joneses, to be like the ones who they can't be like. The profile of the social spender is particularly devastating in high earning circles where the lifestyle expectations are calibrated to the top of the income range and everyone is quietly going into debt to maintain an appearance of ease that they just actually really don't have in real life. So the spending is not about the thing, it's about the fear of being seen as less than. So you might buy and spend on stuff you don't want, shouldn't have, really can't afford, just to fit in. Here's what's important to keep in mind. Every single one of those profiles is medicating something that's real. It may not be real to everybody, other people may not understand it, but it's real to the person experiencing it. So it's a real need for relief or connection or comfort or identity or safety. The spending is not the disease, it's the symptom of the disease, if you will. And treating the symptom without addressing the need underneath it is why every budget you've ever made has eventually been broken and you don't follow it for too long. So let's take a look at the cost. What is this medication actually costing or charging you? So this is because the financial industry will give you a budget and call it a solution. I want to give you the actual numbers so we can kind of look at it in numbers. The average American, and you can see where you fall into the average space, the average American spends between $200 to $500 every month on what researchers and scientists classify as impulse or emotionally driven purchases. So for high earners under chronic stress, that number is often significantly higher, right? If the average American spends between $200 and $500, that high earner, they spend way more than that. But let's just, for the sake of this discussion, let's use $300 a month. It's just a conservative number. So $300 a month is $3,600 a year. Over 10 years, so if we take our $300 a month that we're spending, which is $3,600 a year, over 10 years, let's say we could have invested that, and I'm just going to choose a pretty conservative number of a 7% annual return. That's almost $50,000 of that opportunity cost over 10 years that's lost to that spending. And over 20 years, it's over $156,000 that's lost to that spending. So here's something that I want you to understand with opportunity cost. So you may just be looking at it like, oh, it's only $300 a month. But you're not just spending $300 a month on the things that you don't need. What you're actually doing is spending $156,000 because that's that opportunity cost. Your $300 a month at 7% has the opportunity to grow to $156,000 over 20 years. So you're not just spending $300 a month. You're spending $156,000 of your retirement money on emotional regulation, or $156,000 of your house money, down payment money, your mortgage money. And that's before we talk about the debt, right? Because emotional spending is frequently financed. You're not just cashing out on it, you're charging it, and you keep charging it. And so even if you pay your cards down, you charge it back up. So you're never quite at zero. So the buy now, pay later, that's just multiplied for these type of emotional spenders. The personal loan taken out to consolidate the cards, they're running back up again. So it's a cycle that continues. And the average interest rate on a credit card right now is greater than 20%, which is crazy when you think about it. So that means you're paying a 20% premium on every emotional purchase that you finance. You're paying to feel better in the moment, and then paying again every month after that for the privilege to use that money and spend. So what's actually happening is the medication that you're using, that spending, the medication, is more expensive. It's more expensive than the pain it's treating. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to introduce an interrupt. And here's an interrupt that actually works. So what does work? What works? If you're one of these spenders, what works? I'm not going to just hand you another budget and tell you save more, spend less, and that'll fix the problems. So first, we got to take some steps to kind of find out what's going on. First, you have to name what you're actually feeling. Before you spend, you have to pause and be aware and name what's going on with your feelings. And it's interesting. It's interesting because a lot of us may be in situations where we're not even aware of how we feel or what we feel. Here's therapy again. But when I went to therapy, I was sharing certain stories with my therapist, and she would ask, well, how did that make you feel? How do you feel? And I would say, well, I just think, she's like, no, feel, like here, feel, how do you feel? And I would pause, and it took me so long to really understand how I felt. So my therapist gave me and all of her patients or clients a feelings list so that you can look and identify and point out feelings to see what it is that you actually feel, because you may not even be aware. So before you open that app, before you get in the car and drive to the store, if anybody ever does that anymore, just pause for 60 seconds and ask yourself one question. What am I actually feeling right now? Not what do I want to buy? What am I feeling? Am I bored? Am I stressed? Am I lonely? Am I anxious, resentful, overwhelmed? It's very important to name that feeling specifically. And the act of naming a feeling, it activates the prefrontal cortex, and it begins to interrupt the automatic responses. So you can't redirect the feeling that you haven't acknowledged and that you don't identify what it is. So that's first. Second, the second thing that we're going to do is create a 24-hour rule for anything over $50. Not because the purchase is necessarily wrong if it's over $50, but because in that time, the 24 hours separates the emotional impulse from that intentional decision. So put whatever it is in the cart, close the app, come back tomorrow. And if you still want it tomorrow, it might actually be something that you really want. And if the urge is past, you just saved yourself the purchase and the regret or the interest that you may have charged it and paid on over time. Third, I want you to build a regulation menu. This looks so sloppy. I hope you can understand it. Build a regulation menu that doesn't require spending. And what does that mean? So your nervous system, like we talked about, it needs regulation. It wants to be regulated and kept in homeostasis. So it's a legitimate need, right? It's not a weakness. The problem is that spending has become the primary tool that you use to regulate that. And you need other tools, a walk, a playlist that you turn on, a phone call to a friend, a workout, a nap even, 10 minutes outside. Those are not substitutes for therapy, but they're nervous system interventions that address the actual need, which is relief. That's what you're looking for, actually, without that financial consequence. So you're going to build something that you do, that you can do and go to when your nervous system needs that regulation. So fourth, you're going to separate your decompression spending. You're going to separate your decompression budget from your actual financial plan. So give yourself a specific, intentional monthly amount for pleasure spending. For my clients, I call it heart's desire. So that's a separate bucket, separate amount of money that you spend. It's not tracked, it's not justified, it's just yours. And when it's gone, it's gone. So it does two things when you have that. It removes the guilt from that intentional pleasure spending, which actually reduces the compulsive spending that follows guilt. And it also contains the behavior within a boundary that your financial plan can absorb. So it's not gonna, deplete your budget or take away from your rent money, because it's actually specifically allocated for these feelings when you're feeling that, to kind of address that and help you spend without feeling guilt or shame. Fifth, the fifth thing that we're going to do is address the need, not just the behavior. So this is the one that requires the most honesty out of all of the lists, 1 through 5. This one, if you're chronically stressed, spending less is not going to fix that stress, right? If you're deeply just lonely, a budget's not going to fix and fill that loneliness. If you're running from something, financial discipline's not going to make that thing stop. The spending is information. It's telling you something about what your life is missing or what your nervous system is carrying. And that something deserves your attention, not just your restraint, not just your control or trying to willpower your way through that. That you have to really get underneath. And that's where, therapy or working with an advisor or somebody who understands may be able to help you work through that. Ultimately, keep this in mind. If you identified and saw yourself in any of these patterns or spending categories, you are not the problem. It's very, very important for you to understand that. And it's the most important thing that I want you to take away from this conversation in this video today. You're not reckless. You're not irresponsible with money. You're not somebody who lacks discipline or willpower or the basic adult capacity to manage your finances. You're someone whose nervous system learned at some point that spending changes how you feel. And it was right, it does. Temporarily, imperfectly, expensively, but it does. The financial industry wants to solve that with a spreadsheet. I want to solve it with understanding. Because in the 16 years of working inside of people's money and building financial plans, I've never once seen shame produce lasting financial change. I've never seen guilt build a retirement account. I've never seen self-criticism close a wealth gap. What I have seen work every single time is the moment a person stops fighting their own behavior and starts getting curious about it. The moment they ask and just pause, not why can't I stop this, but what am I actually trying to feel? What am I doing? That question is the beginning of everything. So your spending patterns are not evidence of who you are. They're just evidence of what you've been carrying and what you've been dealing with behind the scenes. And what you've been carrying, that deserves compassion, not a budget revision. Give yourself some grace today. I'm Jamila McClooney. If this resonated, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you're ready to build a financial life that addresses the whole picture, not just the numbers, start at getblackwealth.com. I'll see you next week.